Hi everyone, Janie here. Welcome back to my garden. It is a beautiful, beautiful day. We are finally in a cool down. It's only supposed to get about 72 degrees today. It might rain on Wednesday, which is amazing. And then next week it goes back up to 100 degrees. That's okay. I am going to appreciate the cool weather while I have it. We lit a fall candle last night, the girls and I, and we were so excited. So anyway, it is definitely feeling like fall around here. And I couldn't be happier. It was a very long and hot summer. You all know I've been complaining about it all summer. And it just feels so good to have a little bit of a reprieve in the weather. Hello. That's going in the video. So what I'm doing right now is I'm enjoying my cup of coffee while I have a slow hose on in the back garden where I am going to plant my October Glory maple tree. It is a shade tree, and what a shade tree is, the definition basically, is a tree that will provide shade during the summer when it's hot and we really, really want some shade and some coolness, and then it loses all its leaves. It's deciduous. So in the winter time, when we want the warmth, we actually get the warmth because all the leaves are gone. And October Glory maple is a perfect option for a shade tree. I was planning to plant what's called a London plane tree back here, but I ended up changing my mind when we were shopping for trees, and I just fell in love with the October Glory maple. The October Glory maple is a cultivar of the red maple. It is a very cool cultivar for those of us in warmer environments because it will still change to a beautiful, brilliant scarlet color. The leaves will change in October, even though we are warm here, which is huge. So usually it is the shortening of days and cooling of temperatures that causes fall foliage to change. That's why the cool temperatures like up in Vermont and in Michigan and parts of Oregon, it's cool there, and so the leaves change, and that's why they have beautiful, brilliant displays of fall color. Here, we don't get as beautiful displays because we're just too warm. I mean, October is very, very warm for us. It's starting to cool down. Usually October 31st, Halloween, is when I feel like it's the start of the cool season. But there are some trees that will still change color even with the warmth. And you know I always talk about my Chinese pistache. I love that tree. Some of the trees are even starting to change in town, some of the leaves, and October Glory maple is another one. So leaves change color because of a couple pigments that are found in leaves. And one of them, we all know, it's chlorophyll. It's what gives leaves the green color. It also is an energy provider for the tree. But with cooling temperatures, the cooler temperatures actually slow down the production of chlorophyll in the leaves. So sometimes it even damages and destroys the chlorophyll in the leaves. And that slower production causes us to be able to see the other two pigments that are found in leaves, which are anthocyanins and carotenes. Anthocyanins are usually the reddish color that we see, and carotenes are usually the orangish color that we see. And then there's usually a combination of those that will make all the different colors. I think there's a couple other pigments, but those are the three main ones. So once it starts getting cooler and the days get shorter, the chlorophyll goes away, and that's why we start seeing the other pigments and see leaves turn red, a beautiful red color, or a beautiful orangey or yellowish color. So cool temperatures definitely help with this, obviously, because it stops the production of chlorophyll. But the other thing that helps it is dry, because what happens is that sap is produced, sugars are produced in the leaves, and when it's wet and rainy, those sugars are, there's lots of those sugars, and so it's kind of like diluted a little bit. The color, the pigments are diluted in that sap. If it's dry, those sugars, that sap is going to basically concentrate, and you're going to see more colors. So that's why cool and dry weather is really going to give you the best show go for fall color. So anyway, I know all this because Jason and I actually went on a trip a couple years ago to Vermont to go leaf peeping. We actually went to New Hampshire and Vermont. We kind of drove in this big circle, and it was amazing. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And he and I were like nerds, like, why do leaves change color? Why are some orange? Why are some yellow? Why are some red? And I never forgot it. So the fact that I'm getting an October Glory maple in my garden gives me a little bit of that feeling, that leaf peeping Vermont feeling, especially in October here. And so I'm really excited to get it planted. Now this tree is going to get about 40 to 50 feet tall, 25 to 30 feet wide, and it's a pretty quick grower. It can grow up to 3 feet in a year. So I'm really excited to get it planted. It's a very, very common tree around here, especially for fall foliage and again, as a shade tree. So for all the trees that we've been planting in September, we have been pre-moistening the planting hole. And what that means is we just put a slow hose on the area that we want to plant, and it just makes it so that it's that much easier for us to dig in and create a nice big hole for the tree. When you plant a tree, you want to dig a hole that's the same height as the root ball, but 2 to 3 times as wide. And the reason why is because when you backfill it, you're going to be backfilling with nice loose soil, and it's going to make it really easy for that tree to grow its roots into that whole area, which is exactly what you want. So just this morning, because of the temperature, I got the urge to plant my October Glory maple. So I should have started running this hose yesterday and let it soak in and saturate all night. I didn't. I think it'll be fine. I think that this area is pretty good to dig in. We'll see. You never know. And it's been on there for about a half an hour right now. So I'm just going to go get my tree. I'll show you where I want to plant it, and then we'll get started. So for those of you who don't know, Monty had a little procedure done about 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago now. He got neutered, and he did really, really well. And we were told to keep him calm and to not play with him and not let him run around. Now it's finally time that he's okay to do it. And so we played fetch with him this morning, and the poor boy is exhausted. And it's so nice to see because he has just been a ball of energy for the past 2 weeks. So it is so great that he's tired now. Anyway, so here is my back garden, and here where the hose is where I want to plant the October Glory maple. So right there, right here used to be a palm tree when we moved into this house. We just got the stump ground out, and I didn't want to plant it right there. I wanted it a little bit further over. So let me show you. So here I'm standing kind of by the deck, and I want it to come out here, and I want it to be just off to the side, kind of in this blank space right here. That tree back there, right there, is a hackberry tree, and it's on my neighbor's side of the property, and my arborist told me that it's not very happy. It's not a happy tree, and so, don't plan on it being there for a long time. So basically, I think it would be really pretty to have the maple tree right there. I think it's going to be great because this whole area is going to be nice and shaded, which we really, really need. It will take away some of the sun for my garden beds, but I'm telling you, we have so much sun. I don't need sun. I have plenty of full sun spots. What I need in this garden is I need some shade. So I'll be excited for it to grow and get nice and big and to get its whole big size. I've already measured it out compared to the office. I am going to have to limit up a little bit so that it goes over the office, but I'll like that as well because, again, a shade tree will provide coolness in the summer and then allow light to come through and sun to heat up the area and the buildings in the winter time. And this office has the worst insulation. I mean, the worst insulation ever. I know because I'm out there and I'm freezing during the winter and I'm boiling hot during the summer, even with the air conditioner on and the heater on. So I think it'll be really nice to have a shade tree kind of protecting my office a little bit. So let me get the tree and then I'm going to get the auger and we'll dig a big hole and get it planted. And let me just say, Jason and I worked very, very hard this past month to get this whole area cleaned up. Oh, and I couldn't be happier. Everything is just perfect. You guys, I'm very happy. Look at how good that looks. Oh, I'm so excited. Man, that is just gonna look so good. So think about it, it's gonna be a little bit shorter because the root ball is gonna be in the ground, but that's a pretty good tree to kind of start off with. I mean, I am really liking that. That is beautiful. And yes, it does kind of block the greenhouse a little bit and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, you guys, I think it's worth it because we need some shade back here. We need shade so badly. And it'll make this area so much more usable if we have a little bit of shade. So I am planning to plant like a lawn. I think I want to do a native lawn right here. And I'm going to be kind of boxing in this whole area with all the garden beds. So it should look really, really pretty, and it should give us some space to kind of like lounge out and all that kind of thing. But first, let's get this October Glory maple in the ground. Dug to the depth that I think is good for the tree, but I definitely want to check it. Now, you all saw that I started off with my auger, and I used my auger to actually loosen the soil, not to actually dig out the soil. So what I did is I used my auger and I dug about 5 or 6 holes, and then I put in some elbow grease, and I actually used my shovel to dig the soil out of the hole. And I kind of kept checking it a little bit, but to make sure, I went and I got my digging stick. You can use anything that's straight. Put it across the top of the hole, and then use something else to check the depth. You want the depth of your hole to be the exact depth of the root ball of your tree. And that's because it's super important not to dig a hole that's too deep, because what will happen is the tree will sit down into that hole and all the water will rush in and kind of pool around that tree, specifically around the trunk, and actually cause the tree to rot out. So planting too deep is one of the worst things you can do when you're planting a tree. You even want to maybe plant 1 inch to 3 inches above the level of your soil, just to make sure that you don't have that problem of it sinking in. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do before I get this tree in the ground is I'm going to check the sides of my hole. So what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the sides of the hole that I just dug. Sometimes when you use an auger, or if you have really clay soil, you can get really smooth sides, kind of like you see right there. And you don't want that in your hole, because what can happen is that can encourage the roots to continue growing around in a circle, causing them to be root bound. It can also cause the hole to hold water, to not let the water drain out the sides. And it almost creates like a pot effect or a vase effect, sometimes it's called. So you just want to make sure that you rough up the sides of your planting hole, just to make sure there's plenty of drainage and there's plenty of places for those roots to grow outwards into the surrounding area. So if it's a smaller hole, you can just use your hands to scratch up the sides. But because this is a bigger hole, I'm just going to use my digging stick, and I'm just going to kind of jam it down into the area just to kind of break it up a little bit and make sure that my hole is not dug too beautifully, because that's actually going to cause problems in the long run. Oh, the sun's starting to break through the clouds. So when it comes to amending the soil when you're planting a tree or planting a shrub, there's a couple different schools of thought. Some people think that it's good to mix the backfill soil 50-50, so 50% native soil and 50% enriched soil like compost or something like that. And then there's other people who think that it's more important for the tree to get used to the native soil as soon as possible. So basically, if you backfill the whole tree, if you plant the whole tree in nice, beautiful, gorgeous soil, the roots are going to stay right there in that area where you just planted, and you're going to get that root bound, that circling effect again, which is not what you want. You want a tree's roots to expand out as quickly as possible, because that's going to give the tree stability and allow the tree to get more water and more nutrients. So I have been following the natural soil, the native soil, 100% native soil. And then when I am going to come back and amend the soil, I will just top dress with a little bit of compost. I've been going back and forth on what the exact right way is. Remember, there's no wrong way in gardening. There's just different ways. And so my soil in some places in my garden is really, really bad. And I've been tempted to amend the soil with either compost or planting mix or something like that, but I haven't. I've just stuck with my native soil, and I'm going to continue to do that. We'll see how it goes. This soil looks pretty good, but I'm just going to use completely native soil and not add any compost at all. What I am going to add, though, is I am going to add some biotone starter fertilizer, because again, that helps with that root growth, which is the most important thing for trees. You want that root growth ASAP. And then finally, the last thing that you want to do before you plant the tree is you want to loosen up the roots. You want to check to make sure the roots aren't circling. And you can see this root right here, it's kind of come out, and then because it's been in its pot, it started growing back into the root ball. So I'm just going to try and loosen this up a little bit and see if I can get it growing the direction I want it to grow, which is out. There's that. These are all kind of fine roots, so I'm not too worried about those. But if you come and look here, we have some more roots, and I just want to make sure they're not growing in towards the center of the root ball. There are some people who believe that you should take all the soil off the root ball and splay out the roots. And it's that important to make sure that the roots aren't circling in on each other. I think that that's a lot of work for maybe not so much payoff, but I can see the benefit of it just to make sure that you're getting this tree off to a good start. All right, I think that that looks good. And then I just step back, check to make sure that I like the direction of the tree. Oh, it's so pretty. Oh, it's so pretty. Oh, you can't even see. Look at how pretty. Okay, and then backfill. The most important part of this step is to make sure that there's no air pockets. And so what I'm doing is I'm just shoving my hand down and kind of squishing the soil all the way down as far as I can go without compacting it, just to make sure I don't have any air pockets going on.
I'm going.
Good. Can you see if this is straight?
Yes.
Looks straight.
It is leaning slightly that way.
Needs to be this way?
Yeah. Oop, to that. Yep.
Right there?
Yep. It's a very pretty tree.
Very pretty tree.
It's called what?
October Glory Maple.
Awesome.
isn't this the most beautiful tree? Oh my gosh, I love it so much. Okay, so I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna cut this sucker off. I don't want that there. It's just gonna be stealing energy from the tree. And then you saw I planted it and then I took my foot, kind of held my heel and then pushed it in. And that just is further making sure that I don't have any air pockets as I'm planting. The other reason why I like doing that is it creates a well around the tree, which is what you want because the water is going to collect not right at the trunk, but around in that little circle where my heel dug in. And that's going to allow the water to seep down into the tree very, very slowly, which is what you want. Here, I want to show you right here. This area is called the root flare, where the tree trunk starts flaring out into its root system. You want to make sure that it is planted just to that point. And sometimes you'll get trees from the garden center and they're planted too deep. And so sometimes you have to kind of brush the soil away to make sure you see the root flare. Can you see where it's kind of wet there? So I just brushed it away so that you can see the root flare. You want to make sure you don't cover that up with mulch or anything like that. You do want to come back around and put mulch around it though, because that is going to make sure that the temperature stays cool enough on hot days, and then also it keeps moisture in, which is really, really important for a new baby tree. One of the things you have to watch for these October Glory maple babies is that they're very susceptible to weed whacker damage. So if you're planting it in an area where there's lots of weeds or grass or anything like that, you just want to make sure that you don't bring the weed whacker too close to the trunk, because it can actually damage the trunk pretty severely and set back the growth of this tree pretty severely. So just be really careful with it while it's still a baby. Another thing is, you see this stake right here. You want to take these stakes off. You don't want to leave these on, because these actually give too much support to a tree. And if you give too much support to a tree, it's never going to develop the strength that it needs to handle life on its own. So if I left this transport stake on, the tree will continue getting bigger and bigger, but it'll still be really weak. So a big windstorm comes, it's going to knock it over, break it in half, or bend it or something like that. So I'm going to take the transport stake out, but I am going to put 3 other stakes, maybe like a foot away from the tree trunk, and then loosely tie it to the tree. So it's not really supporting it, but if there's a heavy windstorm or something like that, it will keep it relatively in the right spot. So that will still allow the tree to get the strength that it needs. It's the cambium layer. It's developing its cambium layer. And by having 2 or 3 stakes around it, it's going to protect the baby tree maybe from this guy if he's playing or something like that, or I don't know, if we're like walking around with a wagon or something, it's just going to protect it a little bit. So Jason and I will get those in. I think we want to try and paint the stakes first. I don't know. We have good intentions, but if we get to it, hopefully we get to it. Anyway, I am just absolutely in love with this tree. I just think it is so beautiful, and I'm so happy that I got it in back here, because it's going to make such a huge difference. I am going to prune off this sucker right here because I don't want it to be stealing energy from my tree. There we go. All right, so all done. I'm gonna put a slow hose on the tree, let it get nice and soaked, and then I will put it on a drip system and put a loop of inline emitter tubing around the tree like I've been doing for all my other trees. So I just have to say, this tree was kind of like an afterthought. I didn't really plan on putting a tree back here when I was planning my tree planting for September, and I'm so glad I decided to do it, because I just think it's going to make such a huge difference for how it looks back here and how we live back here by just having the shade. I'm just really excited about it. So anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this, and I hope you all have a chance to get in your garden today.